the Muslim rulers of Afghanistan upset the Mongols. So the Mongols decide to teach the Afghan rulers a lesson. They invade Afghanistan, conquer it, grab the king of Afghanistan, the ruler, and they take him into a bathroom and they bathe him, and then they take all of his body hair off. So he's completely hairless except for his head. And then they put perfume all over him, and they stick him in a wedding gown, and they put him next to a Mongol general, and they do a wedding ceremony. And then there's the honeymoon. And the reason the Mongols did this was first of all, part of their religion was they were animists. They believed that it was sacrilege, spill royal blood on the ground. It was a way to subjugate the Afghans, because now that their king has become somebody's bride, he's in this submissive role to a general, he'll have no authority. And that's how the Mongols subdued Afghanistan. If only the US military had known this little trick. Mongols are like, you know what? We're here. Why don't we just keep going? Haven't you ever wanted to see Persia? And they invade. And they just start massacring. It's a catastrophe. They're killing village after town after city, and they just keep going. And they just keep going. And they get to Baghdad. At the time, it was the largest city on the planet. It had 1 million people. It was the center of art, philosophy, and science. The House of Wisdom was the heart of world's intellectual achievements. The Arabs had, by that point, streets lit up at night, fast food industry. They had figured out coffee. They understood modern medicine. They invented modern agriculture. They knew that all objects in the universe exerted gravity, that light had a finite speed. It traveled in waves. In so many really weird ways, they'd already figured out all the things that we just figured out in the last century. The Arabs had already stated Newton's first law of motion. They already had invented the scientific method. 600 years before Francis Bacon invents the scientific method, Ibn al-Haytham had already invented the scientific method. Kepler's first law of planetary motion, already stated. They had invented the lens. That Mongol army shows up outside of Baghdad in 1258. They tell the people, surrender right now, we will spare everybody. 200,000 people flee. So there's 800,000 people who stay. The reason they stayed was they believed the city could not be captured. It had two sets of walls around it. The interior walls were ribbed with the exterior walls by sets of walls. The exterior-most walls were low. The interior walls were higher, and then the interior-most walls were the highest. That way, if an enemy ever captured a section of exterior wall, you could cut it off with the interior cross-section walls. And even if the enemy captured those, the interior walls were still higher, so you could shoot arrows down on the enemy below you. And the thinking was, it was an uncapturable city. I almost said unsinkable ship. Don't get on those. And don't stay in uncapturable cities, because the Mongols take it. And when they do, they kill everyone. They massacre the whole city. They take the House of Wisdom and they dump it into the river. They just destroy all the books. And then they continue on their rampage. And they begin trying to conquer the rest of the Middle East. They will capture Damascus next. Damascus had developed a level of glass work, artistry, that we don't have today. They were producing a type of steel. They would buy steel ingots from India. They would produce a type of steel that was even stronger than the stuff they were buying in from India, called Damascene steel. They were themselves, Damascus was on the edge of new technologies. And the defenders knew not to stay. The people knew not to stay. They abandoned the city. The Mongols went on a rampage and smashed all of the glass and shattered it into the streets. And so with the night-lit lamps, the streets twinkled shockingly and eerily like in the 1930s in Germany. And then the Mongol army turned south because they were thinking, we're going to go take Egypt. They get to Palestine in 1260. By this point, the Ayyubids have been overthrown and they've been replaced by the Mamluk. Mamluk means owned. At some point, the army, which was largely made up of armed slaves, asked itself a really strange question. Wait a minute, I'm a slave, I have weapons. Almost nobody else has weapons. Why am I a slave again? And they rose up and took Egypt over. They were like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. So they're ruling Egypt. It's their responsibility to stop the Mongol army. At this point, the Mongol army had never, ever been defeated on land. They had conquered China and everything between Palestine and China, and nobody had ever beaten them in the land battle. So the Mamluks show up in Palestine to defend it at a place called Ain Jalut. Ain Jalut means the spring or the well of Goliath. And that's how the Mamluk army feels. They're David fighting the Mongols, Goliath. So it was the perfect spot to do this. The Arabs get in the ranks. They're outnumbered. The Mongols had silk armor, which was really better than metal armor. When an arrow hit the silk, because it's very hard to cut the silk, it would bunch up in front of the arrow. So it'll still stick in your flesh, but because the silk is bunching up, it'll stop the arrow. And then what you do is you just grab a fistful of silk, you twist, and you pull the arrow out, and the injury is minor. So like the Mongols even had this fantastic silk technology that they were deploying on the battlefield. The Mamluk know they're probably not going to win, except for one little twist. Turns out they had just invented the cannon. And so when the battle's about to start, the Mamluk dropped ranks, so there were holes in their ranks because they had the cannons behind them and they were going to fire them. But before they even get to that moment, they see dust off in the distance coming from their left flank. So the Mamluks send riders out, and they see it's the remnants of the Crusaders. And the Mamluk ride out. They send riders to go confront them. They're like, dude, we really don't want to fight you right now. The Mongols are about to kill us. Please let us die in peace. Why do you have to get involved? And the Crusaders are like, no. We're here to fight for you. At first, we liked the Mongols. We thought an enemy of an enemy is a friend. But we figured out that when they're finished with you, they're just going to wipe us out. So we might as well die by your side. And the Arabs go, couldn't you have brought more men then? At Ain Jalut, the Crusaders are like, 6% of the army. But it was probably a morale boost to see them there on the left flank, ready to die with everybody else. When the battle starts, they make the holes, they fire the cannons, and it's like bowling. The Mongols had never seen anything like it. Nobody had. The Mongol army is torn to shreds. The Mamluk charge and massacre them. The Mongols withdraw from the battlefield, stunned, shocked. And they go, you know what? Screw Africa. Let's go conquer something we can handle. And they invade and conquer Russia. You know, there are these things we can't conquer. Russia, Afghanistan. Yeah. It's not nobody can conquer those places. Just most people can't. That's just to clarify. Anyway, at that point, the Mongols stay in the area. They're not gone. But obviously it's changed the politics because the Crusader state is still there too. Tripoli, Antioch gets absorbed. It's gone now. It falls into civil war and they spend most of their time fighting each other and they finally just disappear. Tripoli and Jerusalem are the last Crusader states. Jerusalem basically owns one city. Ironically enough, it's Acre. They've lost just about everything else. And Tripoli basically just owns Tripoli by this point. They've turned into two city-states. Tripoli had decided to side with the Mongols. So in 1289, the Mamluk take them out. They just go conquer them. That's the end of that Crusader state. So there's one Crusader state left. It's the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which owns one city. In 1291, the Mamluk show up. They put the city under siege, and they conquer it. Now, there's a church, St. Andrew's, I think it is. The Mamluk go to the church, and they take the frame, the door frame, out of this church. Not the door, the stone door frame out of the church. They go back to Cairo. They go to a mosque in Khan al-Khalili. So if you ever end up in Cairo and you end up in Khan al-Khalili, go to Al-Barkouk Mosque, the Plum Mosque. When you do, there's two doors to enter the mosque. By the way, the mosque was built with pyramid granite. So you're actually, when you go into this mosque, you will be inside a structure that used to be the outer shell of the pyramids in Giza, which both breaks my heart and makes it really amazing at the same time. When you're looking at the two doors, look at them carefully. The one on the right is a Muslim-style door to enter that mosque. The one on the left is clearly a church doorway. It's the Acre Church. The Mamluk went to commemorate the end of the Crusades and stuck the doorway into their mosque.